what happened to you was unfair and unjust. And at some point, we both looked at what happened and went, no, I'm not having this. I need to stand up. I need to fight back. I need to do something. So you don't pick on someone else like this. I fought back and, I sued one or two people. I made the board of my charity resign in disgrace and I got my job back. But you're going through this now. Can you tell me about what you're doing now?
Right. Well, I mean, I was fairly quickly very angry. As you know, Nick, the initial thing, the first few days is kind of the shock. There's trauma. It is a horrible experience, and you know that as well, because having so many people hate you, even if it's for no reason, it's got to get you somewhere. Um, so there was that shock initially, but I knew even as it was happening, I knew I don't deserve this. This is unjust. None of them actually understand my point of my opinions at all. They're making judgments about me when they know nothing about me. And I was very quickly coldly angry. Um, Also blinking depressed. It was like I'd alternated between kind of the absolute slough of despond and just being absolutely too angry to speak barely. But the day after it happened, I think it was the 27th of June, the day after my firing, I joined the Free Speech Union straight away because I'd heard of it. Um, I just had the sense that the Free Speech Union would be willing to help, and they got back to me straight away. They've been absolutely brilliant. It never even occurred to me to approach the Society of Authors, which was my professional trade union, because I knew how they treated Rachel Rooney when when she had all her trouble. They did nothing to defend her. They did nothing to intervene.
This is part of the problem now with our trade unions. Trade unions were set up because employers would discriminate against certain workers. 200 years ago, if you was a Catholic, you're not working here if you're a Catholic. We used to have no blacks, no dogs, no Irish in B&B windows. And the unions would fight for workers. Unions now are part of the problem. Why does it take someone like Toby Young to set up an organisation to fight for people to have free speech when that's what the trade unions were for?
Yes, and the entire kind of society, the establishment, everybody knew that free speech was a kind of bedrock of our entire world, our entire society. It's always been something we've valued and we're proud of. And suddenly it isn't. And as you say, then Toby has to set up the Free Speech Union because other people won't defend it. And that has been starting since not, I think it definitely was sparked around about the time of the Salman Rushdie fatwa, when some people and some institutions just failed to come out strongly enough and say, no, that's not acceptable. Don't care how offended you are, you know. Um,
At that time with Salman Rushdie, there was a Conservative MP on TV and said, if I knew Salman Rushdie, I'd take him down an alley and I'd teach him some manners. And it's like,
yeah, what? I mean, oh, yeah, and Shirley Williams there was that famous um, appearance of Shirley Williams on Question Time, where she prevaricated and said a lot of people were very offended, and Christopher Hitchens, who was on the same panel, absolutely tore a strip off her for what she said, quite rightly. Um, anyway, so that was it. I did join the Free Speech Union, and boy, do we need it. And I know that a lot of other people have had to approach them because they're not getting any satisfaction from their own people who should be defending them, who should be defending their right to hold opinions and to speak and express themselves freely. So anyway, yeah, I did that. I was they put me in touch with lawyers. It took a long time because I was in quite a state of mental distress, and I could not clarify and focus properly on legal issues. I didn't understand what people were asking of me. It was all very difficult. And also my husband had just died. He died the month before I was fired, like 5 weeks before I was fired. my husband had died. So I was also trying to look after my children and my children's emotional health and trying to support them, trying to find another income source. So that was it. But in the end, the Free Speech Union introduced me to this fantastic guy, Warren Cabral, who is, he's got legal training himself. He's a lawyer, although he doesn't practice in this country, and he really helped me enormously. We went to an employment tribunal. I was allowed to go to the employment tribunal. It was quite a high hurdle to get over because I was late. And also I had to prove I was an employee, not just some sort of freelance independent contractor. So anyway, the first time we went to the employment tribunal, I won on the time delay. The judge found that it was understandable, that there were reasons that were justifiable, why it had taken such a time because of the state of my mental health. But we lost on the point that I was an employee, but we requested permission to appeal that decision, and we've won permission to appeal that decision. So we are hoping to go ahead and try again to prove that I was effectively an employee. This was my main source of income. I relied on it completely, and I was very much under the direction of the company. It wasn't like I wasn't writing my own stuff, basically. Yeah.
No, I'm glad you took him on, because is that HarperCollins is a big publisher. You know, they'll have teams of solicitors working on this, and that's what you're up against. In my case, I was up against 3 friends who didn't have a solicitor. And so mine collapsed straight. No, they all collapsed straight away. But you know, if you're looking at a multinational company like that, much harder to get the result and to get him into court. So well done for even just trying, because these companies need to know they can't run roughshod over us. They may win certain cases, but at least by raising it and get it into the public arena.
Yes, that they don't just get away scot-free. I mean, this is what I remember saying this at the Battle of Ideas last year. I mean, I think there's no point trying to shame, and I'm talking generally now. I'm not talking about HarperCollins or working partners. I'm talking this generally. There's no point trying to shame an anonymous mob on Twitter. They don't have faces, they don't have names, they don't care. As you said, they don't feel shame, and that is one of those things that you mentioned that we should be feeling shame about, is tormenting, persecuting, and driving other people out of jobs. People should be ashamed of that, but they're not. And scorpions are going to scorpion. You cannot shame the shameless. But what we do need to do is we have to make companies, institutions, charities, government departments, we have to make them understand that they don't get away with this. They don't just capitulate to a mob and think that's the end of it. We did what they wanted, we're safe now. They have to understand they can't do that, which is kind of what unions should be for. But as you say, unions are so captured now by much of this stuff. I mean, that they will not defend their members who are being fired for being against, for example, the transgender ideology and the not transgender people, the activism, the ideology, the extremism. Yeah.
I mean, some of the trade unions are worse than that. It's not that they don't stick up for their members. Sometimes they're also the attack dog as well. You know, especially if you're a professor at a university. I forgot the lady's name now. Her union was also part of the problem.
Yes, that's it. Because the unions are so they. And if an employee goes against what they believe, they as an institution believe, they won't defend them, which is not what a union is supposed to be about. And it's the same with the Society of Authors, which is in a terrible state at the moment, because it's not standing up. Of all the institutions that should be standing up for freedom of thought, speech, and expression, you'd think the Society of Authors would be one, but it's not doing it.
We need some new unions out there. We need the capitalist theory that says if you're not getting a good enough service of A, someone needs to set up B.
Yeah. And a lot of these institutions, I do believe that this will not last forever. I don't believe it can, because things that are not based in reality cannot last forever.
It's all changing. It's the pendulum is definitely swinging back, and I think when we look at this in a decade or two, when it's all gone, I think we owe Black Lives Matter a huge favour, because they brought all this to the fore. It was all slightly wishy-washy under the carpet, but because of what they did in 2020, we've started looking at all these things now, and everyone who looks at it goes, no, don't like any of it. I think we've got a couple of more years, but almost on a weekly basis now, we're having huge victories all the time.
Yeah, and the thing with it's the sort of unholy trinity. What is it? It's critical race theory, that's the thing, and queer theory, and
gender ideology.
I've totally forgotten the third leg of it.
Gender ideology.
Yeah. So these are just theories, and they've just been kind of accepted by institutions as unquestionable. And it's people think, oh, I have to do that to be good, I have to do that to be kind, I have to do that to be liberal, and it's not necessarily true. There's very specific aspects of these ideologies that are pretty incompatible with
the Western world,
the freedoms of the society we've become used to. And it can't last. And because it's based in gender ideology in particular, is so based in fantasy and sheer physical unreality, is no way it can last, which is why it would be ridiculous to start establishing it in law and writing it into laws. I just hope that some of the institutions, or maybe I don't. I mean, some of the institutions have been so captured, like unions, like the Society of Authors. Are they going to be able to come back from this, or are they simply going to have to sort of dissolve and be replaced by something else, or can they be rescued from it? Because there's so much worthwhile. There's so much worthwhile in these organizations.
I think they can all be fixed fairly easily, because you can change them if you hold the purse strings. So let's look at the university sector. So if the government said to the university sector, we're never giving a student a grant for this list, gender theory, lesbian dance theory, we're never funding them, students to do them. They're not getting grants to do. You can still run these courses, but it's not going to be subsidised by the government. We're not giving grants for that. If they also said, we're going to rate you on your freedom of speech at a university, and if you don't hit a certain bar, then we don't give you your annual grant. And if you don't reach that, we're not going to give you money to do research for us. Honestly, all these institutions, we think they're woke, we think these people are believers. They're not. They're just cowards who go with the flow, because that seems to be the winning direction to go in. If once you hit their money and you hit their jobs and you hit their pensions, all these people will flip very quickly. But a lot of it needs to come from government.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, probably the funding thing, I totally agree. There should definitely some sort of level and some requirement of universities to permit freedom of debate, speech, expression, thought, and that should go without saying in universities, rather than targeting the sort of funding threat at individual courses. I think that should be where the funding relies. The funding should rely on universities doing what they've always been supposed to do, which is encourage debate, thought, just kind of analysis, critical thinking. Some of the kind of wilder courses, I think, to be honest, that's just the sort of thing that's they'll fade away when people don't get jobs from them. But it's the freedom of thought and speech in universities is absolutely crucial.
They're doing themselves out of business at the moment. They're going to bankrupt themselves if they carry on the way they are. In Washington, D.C., the Judge Network in Washington, D.C. has told, I think it's Yale Law School, we're now not taking any of your students on internships for the whole district because your students have a waste of time. And that's Yale Law School.
Wow. Wow.
It's hitting the real world, and when it hits the real world, then you're gonna come face to face with reality.
Well, that's it. That's it. And that's why I do think it cannot last forever. But in the meantime, we've got, I mean, it's not something we can just wait for it to happen. We do have to, and
We all have to fight.
we do need government to say, look, if you want to run your university as a private institution for just talking about the things you want to talk about, restricting speech, restricting freedom of thought, that's fine. That's your entitlement, but you don't get government funding to help with it. You don't,
Exactly.
you know, they have to have some sort of level of responsibility for free speech, free expression, debate, actual critical thought.